Oh, can everybody hear me? I want you, if you can hear me, to go ahead and go into the chat window and click yes. So we're going to do a little bit of tech stuff to begin with. So can everybody see the chat window? We have some people coming in, starting. We'll be starting soon. All right, very good, very good. So, very excited today. I want to do my best to be on schedule, but of course, we have a lot of people coming in. First thing is, let's do a little bit of a warm up. Do you want to guess how many students we have coming in today? Anybody want to throw up some numbers? How many people do you think we have out there studying the TOEFL right now, Saturday, 11 in the morning, New York time? Let's see. Wow. We have Hardy Kumar, you say 5,000. Liz, 100. Mayan, 60. We have a lot of variation. All right, well, we actually gave notice of this reading program. We have a lot of like hundreds and twenties, so that's pretty good. We gave notice of this reading program, I think it was the first day was Tuesday or Wednesday. And then I gave notice also yesterday on Friday. So with a few days, we actually have approximately 1,000 people registered. So it's kind of amazing. So you guys recognize that you're not alone, part of a really big group. So I'm going to do my best. You guys can probably see the little keynote or PowerPoint presentation that I have for you. So I hope you find it helpful. There's going to be some people coming in a little bit late, so I might repeat myself, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the goal of this webinar and why we're actually offering it. So I'm going to start the presentation. Now, can everybody still see the screen? Can you go ahead and say yes if you can still see the screen? Go ahead. All right, fantastic. So of course, this is part reading mastery, part 1 of 3, and this one is a free course that's going to begin by illustrating a lot of the concepts that we want to master for the TOEFL reading, which can be tough to improve. So just in case we have any tech trouble, technology, sometimes that happens. Don't worry, don't get stressed. If you lose audio, I'll either chat on the window and let you know it was from my end, and if you don't see that, then it's probably maybe your computer lost the internet connection, so you just have to, close it, reopen it, you'll be back in. This will be recorded, and I'll tell you about the details of how you can access this video so that you can review it later. I really hope with all of my power to give you some really good stuff today so that you can feel more confident for the TOEFL. So I'm going to go through things relatively quickly. I'm a teacher, so I do know how to take time, speak slowly, but I also do want to get through a lot of content today to make sure that every one of you leaves today with a better ability to do well on the TOEFL reading. So if you have your test next week, you're going to be better. We have registered students of Noteful here. We have a lot of students from our free online TOEFL email course. We have a lot of students from our already registered programs, so it's really meant to give everybody something to take home. So now I'm excited, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing is, the reason why I designed this is because sometimes I feel that students feel a little bit like this man here, very, very stressed. So it's a little bit of a comic picture, but we get so many emails, we get so many phone calls from people really stressed out that I wanted to offer this webinar as a start to a new way for you to study, not only for the TOEFL reading, but for the listening, speaking, and writing. And before we get started, I actually want to talk about what I find is the greatest cause of stress and lack of success on the TOEFL. And the first thing is that I find that many students, you might have been in this situation, decide to schedule the TOEFL in the very beginning when you realize that you have to take it. So before you even know your level, you're already registered. So that means that you now have a deadline and that may not fit you. You might need more time, maybe you need less time. Then what you do is you prepare with basically every resource you can, which is intelligent, right? At least it feels that way, but that can be quite confusing. So what I want to do is make sure that you understand that you want to Well, actually, let me continue with what happens next. Then, once you start preparing with many different sources, each telling you slightly different strategies and with different levels of difficulty, I see that a lot of students start asking their friends for help. Now, that's a good thing too, but sometimes friends aren't as knowledgeable on the TOEFL as they can be. So, this means that you have a lot of different ideas in your head as to what might succeed and what might not succeed. And that's where we usually find the stress start to come from because that's when we say we've tried everything, we're not quite sure how to improve, and we're struggling. And then that's usually when we don't get the desired score. And oftentimes, what I find students do at that point is they actually schedule more TOEFLs. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to take a test, in a month. I'm going to prepare, go to YouTube, go to different websites, get a lot of different material, a lot of different books, ask friends for help, maybe kind of do a little bit of partnering with students. We take the TOEFL, maybe we don't get our score, so we say, okay, I'm going to try again, and we schedule 2 or 3 later. So that's really what I see leads to that man causing a lot of stress. So today what I want to do is start to show you something different by the way that I'm going to teach you the reading. So what I want you to do is then you reach noteful stress, which you may be at this point. Maybe some of you aren't. I know there are a lot of students who do very, very well on their first try. That's what our goal is. So not everybody is in this situation, but I know that some of you are. So I want to reach out to you. So what we do is we try to change your method. We change your method not only of how you study for the specific sections, but also how you study in general for the TOEFL. And then we often have students who take the test and succeed with other TOEFLs remaining. So they have to cancel it, so that's why we want to make sure that you schedule one at a time. And it's a process. It can be stressful, it can be challenging. It can be sometimes we have students who've taken the test 20, 30 times, sometimes students who prepared for several years. So let's go ahead and get to the meat of this and actually show you how to change your method of studying for the TOEFL reading to be in a better position to succeed. So remember that everyone is muted because, as I said, we have close to 1,000 students registered. So if you had 1,000 voices, that would be pretty tough. But I'll give everybody an opportunity to ask their questions. So is everybody ready to get started with the reading? I see some yeses in the chat window. Oh, look at that. Huge number of yeses. You guys are excited. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about how we're going to study in this class. I took a lot of time to think about the best way to organize it with this number of students. I want to help you specifically, the individual listening. So in order to do that, we're going to go through things live. So the first thing is that I want you to have a sheet of notepaper with you, at least one, and I am going to give you a lot of content today. So I want you to be prepared to take strong notes, and we're going to start with doing some example reading questions. So I'm going to give you some time to look at the screen and actually go through the reading and answer the question. So I want to make sure that you write down the question number. We're going to start right away. I want you to make sure that you write down the question type. For those of you who don't really know what that is, that's okay. Try your best to identify the kind of question you're looking at. Detail, paraphrase, etc., etc. We're going to go over that in detail today. Then I want you to, of course, write down your answer so you have it as a reference. And I'm going to time you. So it's going to be kind of challenging. And that's because some of you have trouble with time management. So I want to show you the basics of that. So be comfortable guessing when you're not sure. If you can't quite do it on the TOEFL, make sure to do it here. Then we have 1 minute for our first sentence scan. And this was something that I prepared for, but I'm actually going to not do that today. And we'll talk about that towards the end. And then we're going to have 1 minute and 16 seconds per question. And we're going to start with 5 questions from a medium to difficult reading that was actually given on the TOEFL. And as we go through this, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat box. And I'm going to be looking at them and monitoring them and making sure that I answer the questions that you have to the best of my ability. So now the fun starts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to time you, and you're not going to see the timer on the screen, and I'm going to kind of chime in. Chime in means periodically tell you how much time you have left. Don't worry because we're going to have an intense review of the questions, but this is just to get your brain working. I know it's early in the morning, so let's go ahead and begin. So what you're going to do when I hit the next slide is I'm going to start the timer. You're going to see one paragraph. and you're going to see one question. You're going to have 1 minute and 16 seconds to answer it. So do your best using the strategies you've learned and go ahead and begin. 1 minute, 16 seconds. Okay, that's approximately 1 minute and 16 seconds. Question number, remember to write this down in your notes. Question number 2. Do your best. Okay, now I'm going to go on to question number 3. Okay, now we're going to try, we're going to move a little bit quickly, give you a chance to answer all the questions. Now we're going to try question 4. All right. Now for the final question before we start reviewing. Number 5, new paragraph. All right, everyone. Good job. So we're going to review question 1. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit because, technology does present us with a little bit of challenges at time. For those of you who are in countries where the internet connection is a little bit slow, you might not have been able to go through it as smoothly. Some of you may have come in a little bit later and lost the instructions before we started the question series. No problem. Don't worry. We're going to go ahead and review the questions one by one. I'm going to speak as clearly and the best that I can so that if you did miss something, you're still going to get it at the end. And also remember, there's an open chat window so that you can go ahead and you can ask your questions. So what did you think about that? In my mind, you heard, or most of you heard, what I thought of those 5 questions. So what do you think? Would you consider that series of 5 questions easy, medium, or difficult? Go ahead and let me know. What do you think? We have few easies and we have many mediums and difficults. So let me talk about that very, very quickly. It's very important that you have the opportunity to diagnose where you feel you are. If you feel that that was medium to difficult, I think that you are in the average position, meaning that that is what I feel most students believe and will experience with those 5 questions. If you feel that it's easy, well then, I hope you got the right answers. And if you do feel that it's easy, that means we're probably in a position to really do well once we start mastering strategy. So remember, my goal is to have this as an interactive session with you. Ask the questions as you see that I've posted some answers to the questions that you guys are asking and continue to ask them. Now, let me go ahead and talk about a few extra points, things that I really want you to take notes on because this is a classroom to me. So it's like I'm giving a seminar and there's a huge group of you out there. I am teaching you. So I want you to remember what I always say. Timing is a choice. You have to make the right one. So what I did was I forced you to follow the timing. You have to do the same thing on the TOEFL. It is that simple and that hard. That's all it is. What happens that gets us into trouble is that we want to take as much time as we need until we feel, hey, I think this is the answer, now I can move on. But that is not the appropriate strategy. Remember, you have to learn from what will help you. And it's not about trying to get 100% on every question, because that means you're going to get a 30 out of 30, because 30 is the maximum score on the reading. You have to be intelligent with where you invest your time and energy, so you have to give an even amount of time to each question. It is a little bit awkward here because, for example, vocab questions, the first question you saw, we usually answer quickly and save time with because the extra time we have from answering the vocabulary early, we can apply to other questions. So I'm going to ask you, that is a teaching mechanism. So right now with hearing my voice, does everybody understand and has learned how to master timing? Yes or no? Great, wonderful. I see like 100 yeses and 2 nos so far. So remember, timing is a choice. That is what it's all about. Now, let's go ahead and start to talk about strategy. The first question was a vocabulary question. So here is our vocabulary strategy. And this comes straight from our reading programs with Noteful. So you have them, this should be familiar. You don't have them, take notes. And this is the kind of stuff that you'll find within them. If you know the word, choose the answer or answers that match the meaning you know best. Then read the sentence with the highlighted vocabulary word to check your answer. That's what it is. It's like a vocabulary question. You don't need the reading for it. If you don't know the word, you're in a tough situation. You read the sentence with the word and guess what its meaning could be. And then you choose an answer that fits the meaning best. Not really too heavy and intelligent strategy there, but that's what it is. So if you didn't know what exploit was, you read the sentence that contains it. We're going to focus on the way that it's connecting ideas, because to exploit is an infinitive. It's like a verb almost, right, everybody? So what's it doing? So of course we're talking about hunter foragers, and we're saying that they moved with the seasons to cactus fruits, deer herds, and nuts. So you're a hunter forager, everybody. What do you think about cactus fruits, deer herds, and nuts? Is that good stuff for you or bad stuff? Please write good or bad. So if you're a hunter gatherer, yeah, everybody's saying good. So we can assume you want, don't want good stuff. Go ahead and type it in. What do? You want or you don't want? Want, of course. So to exploit probably has this idea of get, right? Does that make sense, everybody? Good. But if you look at the answer choices, every single one is possible. Can collect work? Yes. Can make use of work? Yes. Can follow work? Yes. Can locate supplies of work? Yes. So this is why I always tell students that for vocab, you just have to come into the TOEFL with a good vocabulary, because sometimes every answer choice is possible. But if you know exploit, you know the answer is be boy, make use of. That is why I teach you that vocabulary questions. If you don't know it, do not waste time on it, because you're unlikely to get the correct answer, because that's how they test you. They give you many possibilities that could work if you didn't know. So does everybody have a good concept of vocabulary questions now? Good, good. So let's go ahead now and move on to number 2. Or actually, I forgot. If you don't understand, like if you're kind of lost at this point and you didn't know that answer, you must build your vocabulary. Exploit is what I would consider a basic TOEFL vocab word. If you don't know it, you're in trouble. So I strongly recommend our 3-step vocabulary program to get your basics, especially if you don't know the word exploit, or start working seriously on vocabulary. However, 7 words a day. 7. How many words, everybody? What number did I just tell you? Very good. Because if you start studying more, you're going to be distracted. Because it's important to build vocabulary, but it's more important to build reading comprehension. So you shouldn't be spending an hour a day on vocabulary, or only if you study 5 hours a day should you spend that much. Also, don't forget to learn how to use the words, right? And don't just memorize the definition. So again, that's why we have our 3-step vocab program. So make sure that whatever you use, if you don't use ours, don't just memorize the word. Understand how to use it. Now, number 2. Let's see, does anybody know what kind of question number 2 was? How to build vocab in 7 days. I have some questions like that too. So not too many people know, but the next question was, I'm actually going to post someone's answer here. Paraphrase. So a paraphrase question has a very unique strategy that's quite powerful. Here it is. You read the entire sentence in bold quickly to get a general idea of what it means, right? You just want to kind of digest it. Then you read the main independent clause and nothing else. Independent clauses like the main sentence. If you don't know this word independent, please, you need a little bit of help because this is some basic fundamental vocabulary for grammar that if you don't have can pretty much present some difficulty when you're doing any section of the TOEFL. Sometimes we think that strategy will get us to our score, but what makes us successful in preparing students is that we also supplement our teaching and we also work to help you improve whatever fundamentals you're lacking. So if there are some words in the discussion that you don't know, it's probably an alert that you gotta study some basics beyond just TOEFL practice material. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes, no? Great, great. And I love your participation. Please continue. It really, really helps. So when you look at the independent clause, you have to make sure to identify its subject, verb, and object. I have many tutoring sessions with students where they forget this element and they get a wrong answer, and that's a point that you missed for no reason. 3, you read through the answer choices and eliminate any answer that does not state this information from the main clause. What does that mean exactly? Well, if you have a main sentence that says Johnny went home, you need that in your answer choices. And if you don't have it, the answer choice is wrong. And I have this little extra piece of information that in this step, you want to be aware of the relationship, if any, that is created between the two sentences. I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail. I used kind of interesting vocabulary there with our question. 4, read the next most important clause in the highlighted sentence. That's like the two sentences. And 5, read through the answer choices and eliminate any answer that does not state this information. It's a systematic, precise way to attack the paraphrase questions. So here you see that we enlarged the sentence that was highlighted. Now, everybody, can you tell me, oh, Raula says she didn't get it. Don't worry. She, among other people, said that. We're going to review this in detail, okay? So tell me, in that highlighted sentence, what is the main subject? Can anybody type in the word, the main subject of the independent clause? Okay, I have a lot of people saying, oops, I forgot I gave the secret away there. I hope you didn't see that. But a lot of people are saying bands. Since these bands, is that the subject of the independent clause? Yes or no, everybody? Yes or no? Ooh, we have arguments like 50-50. If you said yes, oops. If you said no, good. Bands is not the subject of the independent clause. It is the subject of the dependent clause. Now, please listen carefully, everybody. Since introduces an extra piece of information. So if you're telling me that bands is the most important element, we're in a difficult situation to get a top score because we're not able to digest as we read what the author is trying to emphasize. So unfortunately, that's a trouble spot because I said the subject of the independent clause. Can anybody give me another try? We have a couple of people. Impact. Very good. The hunter-forager's overall impact. Since is an extra piece of information, a huge extra piece of information. The independent clause starts with the subject, hunter-forager's overall impact. Okay, everybody? That's the answer. Now, what is the verb? The main verb of the independent clause. Now it's clear, right? Was. And the object, it's actually a subject complement, but the object is what, everybody? Low. So if we move to the next screen, we see hunter-forager's overall impact was low. Now, remember, if you don't understand, I know I'm a teacher, right? So I know that I'm going to lose some people, but I hope that throughout this presentation, I'll come back and help you. So even if it's challenging, continue to try to follow along. That's our 3 pieces of information that we must have. Let's look at A, everybody. Does A have that? The idea of the impact on their environment was low? Yes or no? No, it does not. So A doesn't have any of that information. You hear me snap my fingers? Right? Immediately we can eliminate it. B, I put it in green. Impact on the environment low. So easy. It's right there. C, it had relatively little impact on the environment. It's right there. Easy. We keep it. D says never enough evidence. Is that true or false? That there wasn't enough evidence to determine the effect of the hunter-foragers on the environment? Is that correct? No, it's false. So it's an opposite, which we teach in the three-step program is a common wrong answer that students will choose when they're stressed out because it looks similar. So what we have is we have B as a possibility and we have C as a possibility. Do you guys see those check marks? That took time to put in. I hope you like the visuals here. So what we have are two answers left, 50-50. So now what we have is the next step, right? What's the next step? Can anybody type in, what do we do now? Do we just guess? Do you remember from the strategy? Exactly. Okay, not everybody has it. So remember, the next step is to look at the next clause because usually in paraphrase questions you have 3 or 4 clauses, right? Some of my tutoring students I know here, I think Ida if you're here, Hadil if you're here, right? Something that we teach normally. So I do remember the name of some of my students, even though we have so many. So what I want you to do is tell me now, because this is what your answer was originally, what is the subject of the next clause? Now, Hong, you said look for the relationship. Good, not quite yet. So tell me, what is the subject of the next clause? Everybody, come on. There we go. Bands, right? Now, what's the verb? Trick question. How many verbs are connected to band? How many? Type in your answer. How many? Very good. 2. Were and never stayed. So we have a conjunction and that's connecting 2 verbs with the subject. So we have kind of 2 pieces of information there. Bands were small and never stayed in one place. So what I want to do right now is teach you, actually, I jumped too fast. So Hong actually was one of the students who said we look for the relationship. That's a little bit too fast. You look for the next clause, subject, verb, object, and you see if there's a relationship. For example, sometimes you'll have 2 ideas connected with and. That means those are 2 facts. But do we have a relationship connecting these 2 clauses, everybody? If you don't understand, it's okay. Some of you are so excited you keep telling me the answer. But remember, even if you know the answer, you have to know the process. Because remember, everybody, I don't care if you get the answer to this question right, to be quite honest. I care that you learn a strategy, that you learn how to use it consistently, so that when you reach more challenging questions under the stressful conditions of the TOEFL, you can still operate and do well. So remember, the process for our session today, right now, the process of how to answer is infinitely more important than whether you're getting right or wrong. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes, no? Does that make sense? Okay, good. So, what relationship do we have? What word creates the relationship between these 2 clauses, everybody? Most people are saying since, some say and. Listen to me carefully. And connects 2 pieces of information within the dependent clause. If I'm losing you, don't worry. I'm going to explain how this works in a little bit. Since creates the relationship. So moving to the next slide, I actually want to teach you a little bit about the difference between since and in order to. So we're going to do a little bit of a lesson right now. So since John wore blue, Susie wore green, right? Wear, like wear clothes. And since Susie wore green, John wore blue. Everybody, do those 2 sentences have the same meaning? Yes or no? Oh, it's almost like 50-50. Actually, no. I think more of you are going towards the wrong answer. If you said yes, those 2 sentences have the same meaning. Oops. Sorry. They do not. Can anybody please explain to me the difference? Anybody? Try to type it in. I'm seeing a lot of interesting answers. Since introduces what? Why do we use the word since? To show what? This word begins with an R, everybody. Yes, reason. So let's look at the first sentence. Since John wore blue, Susie wore green. Okay? So again, since John wore blue, Susie wore green. Which piece of information is the reason? Can you type in that piece of information that's a reason? Yeah, John. John is the reason. So if John didn't wear blue, Susie would not wear green. John, reason, Susie, result. Does that make sense, everybody? Does that make sense? Great. Now look at the next sentence. Since Susie wore green, John wore blue. Same meaning? Yes or no? Now we're getting some stronger answers. Very good. No, not the same meaning. In the second sentence, what is the reason or who is the reason? Very good. Susie becomes the reason, right? Now, do you see how 50% of you in the beginning didn't get it? Does everybody understand that? 50% of the class today didn't get it. What does that mean? The TOEFL just made 50% of the students in this room get it wrong, or at least have a tough time, or get lucky choosing the right answer, or not be in a position to do well consistently. That's why I want you to remember that there are common ways the TOEFL tricks you. That's why I made the next slide, because this is a common way the TOEFL will trick you. They will create a relationship between the two clauses, and then you will not see that, and then be more likely to choose the wrong answer. Now, to comes from in order to, like in order to get, like you're attending this class in order to get a higher score on the TOEFL. So that introduces what? Starts with an R. To is used for reason, reason. So everybody, I'm going to ask you again, please type it in. If you physically do it, you're going to learn more in the class. Since introduces reason, and to introduces something with an R. I might have been a little bit confusing there. Result, result, very good. So since introduces reason, to introduces result. So to get a better job, Johnny wore blue, right? So that means for some reason, maybe the person interviewing likes blue. To wear blue, Johnny got a better job. Same meaning or different meaning, everybody? Same or different? It's different, right? And the fourth sentence is awkward. So which statement represents the reason for the action? In sentence number one, what's the reason, everybody? John or Susie? Sentence number one, John. Sentence number two, what's the reason, everybody? Who? Susie or John? Susie. Sentence number three, what's the reason? Better job or blue? What's the reason? Better job or blue? Blue. Remember, to introduces the result, right? So Johnny wore blue to get a better job. Rana put a sad face. I think that's funny. I'm going to show everybody if I can. And I'll respond with a smiley face. So don't worry, it's okay to make mistakes. That's great. That means you're learning. The fourth sentence, what's the reason? Very good. The reason is job. That's why that sentence doesn't make sense, right? So let's move on and go back to our answer. And let's go ahead and highlight here. Since bands were small and never stayed in one place, hunter-foragers' overall impact was low. So we have the subject bands, the verb were and never stayed in one place, the object small. So we see that B and C has both of those pieces of information, right? It says small bands never stayed anywhere for very long, B, okay. And then C, bands were small and moved frequently. Oh, it's actually a typo, sorry, it should be moved. But you see that both B and C have this. So since is the answer. That's the factor that determines B or C. To keep, to keep impact on the environment low. Okay, B boy. To keep impact on the environment low. Is that the reason or result, everybody? Everybody knows the right answer now. Reason or result? Result. But look at the sentence. Since bands were small. Since. So the bands being small and moving is the reason or the result with the word since. Reason or result? It's the reason. So B is right or wrong, everybody? B is right or wrong? It's wrong. So introduces what? I didn't teach you that in the previous slide because I assume everybody knows pretty much. So introduces here. So introduces reason or result. Everybody? Result. So C is correct. And we get our wonderful check mark back. Now, that's tough stuff. If you don't understand, you must build reading comprehension. You must build reading comprehension. That means I strongly recommend our 3-step reading program or some intense TOEFL specific, very good material. Because if you had trouble with that question, even if you got it right, if you had trouble following me, you have to review and not practice. That means your success will not come from doing 50 readings. Your success will come from reviewing 3 readings 50 times because you have to get those fundamental concepts of since, to, for, clauses, independent, dependent. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no? Does that make sense? A couple of people saying no. A couple of people meaning like 2 out of 100. So what I mean by that is review more than practice if you had trouble. Number 3. Does anybody write down, remember what number 3 was? Good, good. We have some good answers here. It was a plugin. These are like paraphrase and plugin are what I'm happiest with because in my opinion, those are some of the questions that when you learn the Noteful strategy become much easier when you master and apply it. So what's the process? 1, remember, this is from our program. If you have our program and some of this is new to you, you got to review and memorize because you're not ready yet. For those of you who don't have the program, take notes because this is the stuff that will create success. 1, read the sentence carefully to identify what it's saying and the keywords within it, right? You always have to have a concept first. 2, read the paragraph and find the sentence or sentences that contain the keywords or synonyms of them. You mean the keywords in the main sentence. I'm going to show you this. 3, if that's not enough to find the answer, look for pronouns. 4, if that's not enough to find the answer, you're having a tougher question and you have to look for connecting words such as however, consequently, therefore, that show how your sentence relates to the information in the paragraph. Is everybody following me? Yes or no? Good. And we have some people coming in late. Don't worry. Don't worry about what I refer back to. Just worry about what I'm teaching you at the moment. Number 5, if that's not enough, really tough question. And what you have to understand is whether your sentence is general or specific. And then in academic English, general sentences go first, specific sentences go later. So plugin can be quite challenging. Let's look at ours. Can you guys tell me? So here's our sentence. This is so because no evidence of domestication such as enlargement of grain size or thinning of seed coats has survived in these regions. Can anybody tell me the key words there? Go ahead and start typing them in, please. Domestication, read, come on everybody. Very good. Very good. We have a lot of domestication, a lot of evidence. Keywords are basically everything. Seed coats, it's every noun, every kind of content word. So if you look, I have them all in green. So you see that most of the sentence is in green. It's not like a quiz, like, oh my goodness, which one's a keyword and which one's not. No, just most of the content information is a keyword. And if you look, you see survived and you see subsisted. Somewhat synonyms. If you don't know those words, write them down. You need the vocab program. Margins of the lake, regions. Roll in their domestication, unclear, kind of similar to no evidence. Mexican highlands regions subsist, survive. But if you look at this, you see that a lot of the heavy content is located between answer choices B and C. So you might have keywords scattered throughout the entire paragraph, but really you're probably going to identify one area where there's a large concentration of the keywords in the sentence. So that means our answer is likely B or C, because remember, you had a minute and 16 seconds for each of these questions. You have to have strategy mastered, memorized, like no problem. Then you're in a position to do well. Until you reach that point, you're not in a position to succeed. You're still in the position to get the same score because you see how mathematically precise we are. So let's go ahead now and use the next step, which is pronouns. What are the pronouns? This is so, because, and these regions. So B or C, everybody. We have pronouns that refer back to information. So our answer is B or C. So we have a couple people, well, actually maybe one or two people posting questions with tech trouble. Just the internet connection. I think it would be good to log off and then log back on if you do have that issue. So C is correct. And the reason is because when you look at it, so you see our little check mark comes here, it's because this is so because no evidence, right? Because it's saying unclear, right? The role that these bands played on domestication is unclear. Why? This is so because no evidence. So there's a really direct relationship. And remember, pronouns come after you mention the noun. Does that make sense, everybody? I think I have one person who posted that nothing they got was correct. Great, great. I had a friend who started the new year very sick. And that's a good way to start the year because after that, everything is just going to improve, right? So remember, it's how you look at it too. So if you're having trouble and things are making sense as I review them, you have a great opportunity to improve. So with that said, if you don't understand that one, this is an easy question with strategy. I mean, I must say, like, I never want to make you feel like unintelligent. So it's not about level of intelligence, it's about level of understanding of strategy. So if you don't understand strategy and you got it wrong, it's a great thing because when you learn it, you will get those questions correct more often. So please build your reading comprehension if that's tough. Memorize either our three-step program or anybody else's. Well, nobody else really has something like that, but make sure that you memorize and master the process that you just learned. And I say memorize and don't practice because a lot of times students feel that what creates success is if they have, 2,000 readings. I'm sorry, but I've been doing this a long time, and we all know education. You don't get huge results by doing so many readings, only after you've memorized the strategy to practice implementing them. Does that make sense, everybody? And we have this. Thank you for that wonderful comment. Good. Now, number 4, detail. Just to move a little bit more quickly, very basic detail question, just asking a fact in the reading. Here's the strategy. 1, read the question to understand what information you're being asked to find. Listen, everybody, very carefully. I know I say that so often, but really, I do want your attention the best that I can have. When you attack these questions, you really do have to understand what you're being asked. Don't just go straight to the keywords and look, because then you're not going to know what you're actually looking for. Because sometimes an answer choice is factually correct, but is not answering the question. And a lot of students get tricked by that. So don't be one of them. Does that make sense, everybody? And it does. Wonderful. And don't worry, we're going to keep reviewing. 2, Identify the keywords in the question to search for in the reading, just like we did with plugins. 3, start reading quickly from the beginning of the paragraph in search of the keywords or synonyms of them, or at least where you left off. 4, big piece of information here. I'm going to summarize it. When you find the keywords, sometimes you're going to have to read the next sentence to find the answer, or the sentence after that. It's not common, but it happens for more difficult questions. Number 5, once you've identified the answer, so again, I'm going to make a little alarm bell. Please pay careful attention. You have to pre-phrase an answer first before you look at the answer choices. Right, everybody? If you don't do that, you are maybe 3 to 5 times more likely to get an answer choice wrong. That is where you build skill. If you learn that from me today, if today the only thing you learn, you right now, is that before you look at the answer choice, you must come up with an answer by yourself from the reading, I will already have improved your score. We will already have improved your score. Does everybody get that? Yes or no? Good. Okay, so I have a couple of questions that came up. Let me just see here if there's anything I can answer. And I am going to teach all types of questions, but I'm going to tell you more about that later. As you can see, it's intense to teach just one. Summary questions, all that stuff is going to come later in the series. So let's go ahead and attack the question. So here was question number 4. Can you guys chat and tell me what was the actual keywords in the question? Like, basically, it's asking us which of the following developments occurred in Mexico between 9,000 and 4,000 years ago. So let's go ahead then and tell me, okay, a lot of you have developments in Mexico, but what is this question asking us for? What is that question asking us for? Like, can anybody give me a good, easy synonym of development? Because it's asking for which of the following developments. What's a development? Look at everybody here has excellent vocabulary. Improvement, progress, results. Some of them not so, yeah. Improvement, result, progress. Something changed. That's what we're reading for. So you guys identified the keywords 9,000, 4,000. Look at that. This happens, I would say, once out of every 2 readings, maybe even once out of every reading, but you'll get keywords spread. So do you see how we have keywords 9,000, 4,000 in the first sentence and then 4,000 in the last sentence? Does everybody see that? Yes, no? Yeah. So what does that mean? You have to go through the whole thing. Start from the beginning and go through the end because you have to analyze it all. If we're lucky, the answer is in the first sentence. If we're not, it's in the last sentence. Guess what? We're not lucky. This one took time. The first sentence was a fact. It's just a piece of information. It is not a development. The second sentence was another fact. It's just saying something like the bands were small. They never stayed in one place. That's just a fact. Their impact was low on the environment, right? We spent a lot of time on that sentence. There's no development. A few groups along the margins of the lake, blah, 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 just another fact, right? We don't know their role in domestication. So the first 3 sentences do not tell us the answer because they just tell us facts and they don't tell us a development. Does everybody understand that? A, B, and C are incorrect. Now, you see that if you don't understand that you're being asked for development and you don't take the time to understand what development is, you can spend like 5 minutes on this question because you have 3 sentences to analyze before you get to the sentence that contains the answer. Does that make sense? Does everybody see how you can waste a lot of time here? Right? That's why strategy is important. And that's why I really want to emphasize to everybody here, you cannot skip a step. I don't know how to say it intelligently, but it's like surgery, right? Think of a surgeon performing open heart surgery. What would happen to the patient if the doctor forgot to stitch you up and left the open hole, right? What would happen if the doctor forgot to make a clean incision in the beginning? Would that be pretty or ugly? The dye gets sued, right? Terrible. So I don't want to be crazy, but it's the same thing with strategy, our strategy. I mean, every step is critical because if you didn't do the first step, which some of you might think is not a big deal, oh, understand the question, who cares, just look for the keywords, you would have lost this one. So the third one actually introduces the words 4,000 years ago, maize had become. Had become introduces a change, right? I became a teacher. Before I wasn't, after I was. That is a change, a development. Does everybody get that? Great, great, great. Wonderful, wonderful attentiveness. Thank you. So, what was the development or change? Could subsist mainly on maize. What does subsist mean, everybody? Survive. Very good. Don't know that? Need vocabulary. You see that that's more than once that we've seen that word. So, our answer is A, B, C, or D, everybody? It is D. And do you notice it says the exact same thing? As long as you know the words. Maize emerged, had become, dominant food plant. Subsist mainly. So they're synonyms, but it's the exact same information. Does everybody see that? Great. So you see how you have to prephrase the answer first, right? So what happens if you don't understand that? Some questions need time. If you didn't get this one correct, that's not too bad because this one was tough because you had to really digest a lot of information, so it's not easy. If you got it, awesome, awesome. Some questions are outside of our current level. What that means is it's going back to timing. You don't like if you try to answer every question correctly, like 100%, you're going for a strategy of a 30 out of 30. If you're getting an 18 on the reading or a 14 on the reading, that is an incredibly inappropriate strategy. You want to make progress. So you take small steps forward. So that means that you're choosing the questions that you think are good or not good. Now, a lot of students, even if they had 5 minutes, wouldn't get that answer correct, depending on their level. Even if you had 5 minutes. I know this because remember, I tutor all the time. So that's why you have to make the right choice with timing. Pace yourself. A minute, 16 to 20 seconds. What we teach in the program is 6 minutes and 20 seconds for the first 5 questions. So you're not so precise down to the question because that's awkward, but you got to be down to the group. Does that make sense, everybody?